This is the Lucie Beatrix podcast. I'm a magazine cover girl turned competitive athlete, talking to some of the most hopeful, striving, and determined people that I can find. And today we're having a chat with Anthony. And Anthony is a comic and a writer, but to me, he's a friend. And we're going to be talking about relationships with people, places, and things. And since New York City is the home that we both share, I figured we'd start with New York. If you don't mind just describing your relationship with New York City.
New York makes me cry.
I mean,
no,
that's,
I'm kidding.
that's
I'm
an
kidding.
LCD.
I'm kidding.
Have you know the LCD sound system song that's New York, I love you, but you're letting me down? It's this painstaking relationship with New York that we all have that's kind of like masochistic.
I love New York. I've been here forever. And, but since I've been in Africa for the most of a year and a half, I've been coming back every 3 months or so. I'm a little out of place, but yeah, I still love it.
So you went to South Africa over the pandemic to be with your mom, who lives there. And so were you here for the pandemic at all, or did you?
Yeah, for the first year.
Oh, okay. So you experienced like the worst of New York, or
Yeah.
the apocalypse of New York, when it was the opposite of what it's been all this time. When did you?
I was the one who got COVID first and was like, come on, everybody, let's hang out. And nobody would fucking hang out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so
total
then
drag.
you go there and come back just as things are waking back up. I feel like, what's crazy? So as the pandemic was lessening and it was like, people were just starting to come out of their homes. I think it was last summer. I saw you on Bedford Avenue. I think you were coming out of your apartment, and I was like, oh my God, a human that I recognized from the before times, someone that was part of like my life before all of this. And it felt so exhilarating to see a familiar person, because you reminded me of what New York was before all of this. But so what brought you to Brooklyn? Like, how did you end up in Brooklyn?
Wow. I should have been there way earlier. It just took a minute because I had to go down to Florida and that's a whole nother story. But yeah, so in 2005, I came back to New York because I had been in Manhattan before that, and then kind of growing up in the city. And then even when I was out in Greenwich growing up with, my mom's place, my grandparents were in the city, and then parents got divorced, dad out of place. So, my whole life has been around New York City.
But so when did you first start coming here?
Yeah, so my
New
deal
York?
is I came back to New York like I've got to work in film. So I started working at Green Street Films and then Panamax Films in Tribeca. And I knew I wanted to live in Williamsburg. In 2005, there was no other place to be. That was the shit. You had to live in Williamsburg. It was cool. It was like a million other freaks just doing their thing, getting paid somehow. And it was fun. Like, you'd go into a cafe, they were playing all the music I liked. I mean, the food was, everything was perfect. I finally felt like this is home. This is what I've been looking for. And then it disappeared. Like,
that is exactly my sentiment to Williamsburg when I first came to New York, because I was living in Chelsea when I first came here in Manhattan. And I remember taking the L train for the first time to Bedford Avenue and getting out and looking around and just realizing, oh, the buildings are lower. It's like warehouses. And it was just something about it was so different. And like the kinds of people walking around, oh, you guys are wearing like all these weird things, and it felt different. And then I wanted to live in Williamsburg and found a really cheap place to stay. But yeah, there was an energy about Williamsburg in those years. Like 2007 was when I came. So I guess it was at the tail end of when it was like you had experienced it a little bit before that. But
I missed the glory years, though, that sort of 2000 to 2005. I mean,
yeah, and it was like
exploding.
It was definitely like a culture hub. And I think it's just like if you think about all the bands and just the parties and 285 Kent and these, like, I don't know if there was this guy, Todd P. He had all these random pop-up parties and stuff. And just, you think about, it was before social media. So people were going to these parties to just have so much fun and not have to show it. And I feel like that was also what made it so cool and unique. But
what about Cokies? Did you ever hear about Cokies?
No.
That bar where you could just go into the back. There's like a window in the back and just buy really cheap bar Coke.
No, I didn't know about that.
I was there. That was like the last of the old New York. Like when I was growing up, I mean, I got into crazy shit when I was a kid. And, you know, because my dad lived on 46th Street. So I'm like 13 running over to Times Square, and it was not safe.
So wait, so
then.
sorry to interrupt, but so your parents get a divorce when you're a kid.
Yeah.
And your dad has a place in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And your mom is in
Greenwich.
In Connecticut.
Yep.
So you have this Connecticut life with your mom.
Yep.
And then you have the weekend, I'm assuming, weekend life with your dad on 46th Street in Manhattan.
Yes.
No
supervision, no curfew, pocket full of money. My dad's like, fill the fridge with beer. Why don't you go? Start there.
And you're, how old are you? You're 12?
13.
13?
I'm smoking cigarettes. I'm drinking with dad.
Wow.
We're going out to like Le Bernardin or Le Cirque, you know, drinking wine, champagne, like fine dining with my stepmother, Inger, who was a total character.
And so this is on 46th Street in Manhattan.
Yeah, near the UN. She worked at the UN. She was a lawyer and all this stuff. My dad was a commodities guy on Wall Street. So, but my dad was just, he didn't want to be the bad guy. He's like, do what you want. I trust you. And so I'm going out till 4 a.m, going to like Xenons, dancing, making out with like 30-year-old women. I'm like 13.
It sounds like, I don't know if you've heard Drew Barrymore's story, but she had kind of a similar experience in New York where she's going to the clubs
Except
at
she's
13.
like 8. She's like 8,
yeah,
which
exactly.
is really, that's like wrong. I'm sorry. At least I had hit
13.
puberty. For fuck's sake, man.
So you're experiencing this version of New York when New York is really quite seedy. And I mean, it's
dynamic and interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
and dangerous.
Isn't this when Times Square
cool.
was when, you know, it was just a dangerous place to be?
It was all porno and drugs. So yeah.
So you're experiencing this underworld, or, you know, the life of New York. How did substances play a part in that?
Okay, well, I'm 7th grade looking for a nickel bag, so I go over nickel bag, right? That's the
because it was truly a
70s,
nickel.
80s, $5 of weed. And it would come in like a yellow envelope. It wasn't see-through. It's like those little things that you put change in, almost look like. And so, anyways, I'd go over to 42nd Street, and I used to get ripped off and threatened and almost killed over there. I would go and like these guys would shove like Trident gum inside the little nickel bag, and I'd be like, damn it, I got it. I got burned again. So, yeah, so I was trying to buy weed, and I had like a bong that I could buy on, you know, 42nd Street, and prostitution everywhere, like strip booths, it was just insane.
But so describe a time when you felt like you were maybe in over your head as a kid in New York. Like, do you ever feel like you got yourself in a situation where you were like afraid?
Well, yeah, because I almost got jacked a couple times, you know.
And then were you like, did you hide this stuff from your mom when you go back to school on Monday morning? Or like, what did she think when you're like getting your backpack and going to class?
Yeah, no, she didn't really see any of that stuff. And then neither did my dad, like the bong, the paraffin, you know, that kind of stuff.
So how did your relationship with New York evolve, or, you know, as the city changed? I mean, it definitely changed in the 90s and into the 2000s. How did you grow into the city, if that makes sense? Like, I know that you became a comic, you like explored different careers and stuff. Like, what was your scene, or where did you find yourself? Like, where were you? Where did you grow with the city?
Yeah, so at first it was Lower East Side. I used to go to the Annex. They had at first it was at Don Hill's.
Oh yeah.
It was like because I was into the Britpop scene. I had like a mod look going on, and this is like before the Strokes kind of took that look, and then everyone had that look or whatever. But so the Annex was really fun, and also the dark room before they shut down half of it. I guess everybody was like getting super fucked up in there because it was literally dark, and you could just put coke out on the table, and people were doing that. And yeah, so down on the Lower East Side, that was kind of the scene that I thought was cool. And then a lot of the bands at the time, this was like right after the Yeah Yeah Yeahs and the Strokes and all that stuff. So it was more like who was big in 2006. I don't know, it was like Bright Eyes or something.
Right. And that time, I that's right when I was coming to New York. And I I knew the people hanging out with the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. I knew those bands, like the bands that were adjacent to them. And it was kind of amazing to think that that kind of music of the guitar, bass, drums, or even just more simple, just like guitar and drums, like the way the White Stripes were just like, you know, 2 people in a band. That kind of music was becoming super mainstream. And so it was interesting to see that catch with the masses and be something that became so big when it was truly, the Lower East Side was the epicenter of that. Playing at pianos, those bands were then going on to then play the Academy Awards or something. So it was like they went from this cool underground scene to like very, very commercial and big. But it was kind of interesting to see the people kind of around those bands, like the Strokes and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, that were on the cusp of making it, but then just didn't. And those people are still playing shows in the neighborhood now. But yeah, no, that was an interesting time.
Like child
for sure.
abuse, you know, child abuse. My friends in that band.
Yeah, exactly.
They still play.
And yeah, it's kind of cool that they still are doing it, even though they didn't necessarily make it in that way of like the big commercial success. But so you were kind of rolling around the same streets I was. I wonder if we ever crossed paths down there.
It was kind of a trip. You're living somewhere and everybody kind of is somebody at a low level, which is cool because celebrities are kind of annoying sometimes, right?
Right.
So
I think you and I relate to this a lot, where it's the idea of making it. I feel like New York is one of the only places where making it doesn't mean you're the most famous or even the most lucrative, or like you're not financially as profitable off of what you're doing it. Making it is more that you're doing the thing still, or like, if that makes sense, or just still after it, or still have that hunger. At least to me, I know people who are still playing in these shows and they're not necessarily like the biggest name, but to me, they're making it because they're doing what they love. And that's what I admire. But yeah, I feel like that's a New York thing though, because so often other places you go, it's all about like, okay, well, have you done this? Have you done that? Or do you have a show? Do you have this? It's like, no. In New York, it's just, if you're just living your life doing your thing, that's good enough. I can respect that.
Yeah, people get like caught up in the stats, right? When you go elsewhere, and in New York, you just sort of assume everyone kind of has it together or something. Or I don't know.
Even if they don't, you might be sleeping on a floor somewhere, but if you're working on your craft, cool. Like I think that's the most noble thing of all, is to be working on something that you're really excited about, even if it means sacrificing your quality of life. And that's always like, that's what I think is cool. Yeah, but it's
people think like, you know, New York, if you don't live here, they're like, you must have to have all this money to get a girlfriend or to have a relationship. Little do you know, like so many people live here on the cheap because they found their little nook and they're like, okay, well, I'll just make it work in this closet and like pay a couple $100s a month. And they'll bring somebody home to that closet.
Exactly.
Who's somehow okay with it.
Yeah. And it's like kind of shameless, but in a weird way, it's very humbling, because I think in New York too, there's the different tiers of wealth, of like, you're either really mega wealthy and you have a lot to show for it, or you're kind of like, you might not be not well off, but because it's New York, you're not living it up just because of like how expensive stuff is here. But I've found that it kind of levels the playing field a little bit, where it keeps people who, like, yes, there's the 1% and they're going to be living this lavish life. But then there's like the people kind of in between that we're all kind of in it together. And, you know, I know people who are doing really well, but maybe their apartment is still kind of like in a crummier building, or it's not necessarily like perfect. And I don't know. I think
like, does it smell like cat piss? That's the deal breaker for me. I'm like, you walk
or
in, you take
even just AC. I still know apartments in New York that they don't have AC, and they don't really. It's AC.
Yeah,
like, I don't,
top floor, no AC. Okay, way to lose weight.
Yeah,
right?
And like that. But that's such a thing in New York, where in the middle of the summer, walking into someone's apartment and it's just like a sauna, and you're like, oh, you're one of those apartments.
My neighbor does not use deodorant. I'm on the 4th floor, and it's like.
Yikes. Yeah,
it's getting warm out because he smells.
But there's that New York thing. I was walking around the city streets last night. It felt like such a magical midsummer night in Brooklyn. But this where people are just it's too hot inside the apartments. Even if you have AC, it's still too hot. So people are just sitting outside of the fronts of their apartments, like on stoops.
Yeah.
Just
That's New York.
chilling,
That's the old New York.
sweating, and just like talking. And I was walking around. I'm like, this is the best. Like, this is what makes the city, is just the people shooting the shit at night. I'm like, you don't get that. You don't get that other places.
Yeah, West Coast, it's too cold. Like if you're in San Francisco, you get one balmy night a year or something, right?
Right. And
so
and
New
just
York
even being proximity of just like people just chilling and
for
talking.
a million different reasons, right? Yeah, that's one of the beautiful things about New York.
It's one of my favorite things, and I think that the thing that I always go back to with my relationship with New York is just the kinds of people and the range of different kinds of people that I'm just in one day. It's, you know, however many dozens of unique types that I get something from, even if it's just like the street performer or something. I'm like, oh, wow. Like little things I pick up on all day long that then inspire me. That's why I love New York. And I feel like what people are going after isn't as, I don't know, it's like not as showy or something, but I don't know. So when you were in South Africa over the pandemic, or the year and a half that you were there, what was the number one thing that you missed and you wanted so badly to come back and like experience?
Food.
The food in New York.
It sounds terrible. I guess I've been so isolated for so long. It was like, I don't care about people. I want my food. The food in South Africa sucks. after like a month, you're just, because I eat out a lot, and it was like, I can't eat peri chicken like every single night. I'm sorry, but the pizza is disgusting. And
so you just missed that. And like, did you feel like your sense of community remained in the city, or did people flee? Because I know for me, so many people left and that they never came back.
It was a nightmare. I was like, and they just disappeared and still stayed in New York. I was like, what happened to this person or that person? I got ghosted by like 6 people.
Wow.
I have no idea why they just stopped texting. I'm like, did you go that psycho during the lockdown that you just don't talk to people anymore? Because I still haven't talked to most of them.
I also think that the pandemic brought out a flakiness in people. Like, it's so easy to cancel, or you would think that after all that being cooped up, that it would make us want to be so extremely social and say yes to every opportunity that's a chance to be.
No, it just brought out basically the direction that we're going in, which is just to be compartmentalized people that are automated.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Well, another interesting thing about you, speaking about that, that stands out to me is you're not a social media guy. And so what's that? Like, how do you resist?
It's called healthy.
I mean, yeah, I admire it, because I feel like I've had to, like, against my will, like, surrender to it and just use it. And I see the benefit of it, but I also wonder how people like you stay out of it.
Well, okay. First of all, if my brand picks up, I won't have a choice. I'll have to do certain things, but I don't personally do it because I don't enjoy it. It's no fun anymore. Nobody's funny. Like when I first started doing Facebook, it was like, or MySpace was the thing. It was like, cool, let's crack each other up. Let's write a funny blog. Let's do something to entertain people. And it was great. And then Facebook just became like, well, your parents are on that, or you can't say anything because your coworkers are, it just became this stupid thing that nobody enjoyed anymore, but they just were a slave to it. And then it was like, okay, now Twitter, then Instagram, it just kept getting worse and worse. And now we all know that it's toxic for you.
It's definitely a problem. And I'm trying to understand how to have a healthy relationship with it, but I always go back to like the people who never really, like, you're not really you're not on Instagram.
No, I'm not. I'm the only one I know who's not on Instagram.
It's so cool though, because I really do think that's the next thing. I think that's the next wave.
That's the new punk rock.
It is.
Fuck Instagram. It is.
I agree.
I'm telling you, get off that shit.
It's definitely punk rock to me.
If you want to know what it's doing to your focus, you got to read Stolen Focus by Johan Hari. He's like, they've hijacked our brains. People's attention lasts for about 3 minutes and then it's gone because of all the notifications you've been getting throughout your day that make you go from your focus to something else. And it's like, no, I'm not going to be some sucker for the big tech industry.
No, the data mining and tracking, like that stuff too.
Oh yeah, that
I know that I have set my phone on Do Not Disturb, and it's so you don't get these notifications.
Is that what that?
Yeah.
I'm like,
so
okay. I don't even know what that
does. But people use it for like nighttime when they're going to bed, so they don't. I
Isn't
learned
that just
about
the
this.
same as turning like the ringer
Well,
off?
it just makes it so that like you really have to go look for your like, so like when I get texts and stuff, it doesn't just pop up on my screen. I have to go look for them, or like, and in a weird way, it helps me just be a little bit more. I can take a second, like I'll decide to go look at this, and it's good. I never turn it off now because I just don't like notifications because they drive me crazy.
Always on. Yeah, see, you're doing the right thing.
I'm trying, but it's also kind of I can miss things and then suddenly I'm lost. But
that's when you're a bad friend.
That's when I'm a bad friend.
That's what you were a bad friend to me one time, and I let you know it.
Well, yeah.
That was crazy
that
awkward.
That was a moment
but
we
cool,
had.
Cool, right? That we were able to be
so
real with each other.
Basically what happened was I hadn't seen you in a long time, and then we kind of reconnected, and then I ran into you on the street, and you made it known that I had totally ghosted you. And I felt bad about it. Because I don't want to ghost people, but I've also been called out on this before. Like people have called me flaky and said like, hey, you kind of never responded or you never did this. And so you called me out and it was like a weird little moment.
It didn't go well.
It didn't go that well, but then it kind of did because we learned, okay, or at least like we got over this hump of like, hey, I didn't like that thing that you did. You ghosted me. Yeah. I don't know where we stood, whatever.
Once we took the blame out of it, it was like, no, I'm not mad because you thought I was mad at you. It was like, I'm not mad at you. I'm just bummed.
And I think that this like confrontation, I feel like maybe in the days of old, people would just say stuff, but because we're so used to having this like these different degrees of separation of like how we actually feel with like, okay, I feel this way, but I feel like I should go to a screen first and then articulate it and like calculate how I'm going to say it. And then no, we just having to deal with it. It felt so weird. I'm like, this is a new place to be of like actually
who is this guy?
Someone.
I'm the fucking wasp Larry David right here. Exactly. That's exactly who
I am. Calling me out on the sidewalk and I'm just looking around like, okay, I did something wrong. I ghosted this person and now they're actually holding me accountable. And
trying to be nice about it. I honestly was just like, I care about you, we're friends, and maybe I don't matter that much to you, which is kind of a bummer. And that's all it really was. And it's like, but how long did it take to get there? We sort of walked away from each other in a huff, but then we texted later and you were kind of mad in the text, but I was like, I just let you say what you needed to say, and I just kept saying no, I just was just really kind of just bummed.
Yeah.
And then you got that, and then it was all good.
Yeah, and I think it's the honesty. I see the honesty, and like that was like, okay, well, what is underneath all of this? Like you got ghosted, that wasn't a fun feeling, and you didn't understand what that meant. But I think that like that communication.
You want to get underneath that?
What?
Because I'm like, wait, you want to know what's underneath all that?
Well, like I
have an idea.
I feel like I sense there was like pain of like, why did you ghost me? Yes. I'm back in town and you disappeared.
It's exactly, you nailed it. And it's that I've been in Africa for, what is that, like 17 months, minus a few trips back for 3 weeks here and there. And it's weird living in two continents and not having. Like over there, the pandemic just kept going on. They had another lockdown when we were done with that shit. I was completely isolated again. So I come home and I'm like, all right, I'm not getting any love from people. I guess I don't matter to people anymore. And that's what was kind of underneath it.
And like, the whirling feelings of like all these people are like we're all.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't feel like I fucking matter to anybody. And if you look back on my childhood, it's like my mother moved to Africa when I was like 15. My dad was in the city, was awesome, just like do what you want, but I raised myself. And so my friends were always the most important people in my life. And it's like, and if my friends weren't into me, I'm screwed, right? Because these are the people that I usually matter to. Luckily now I matter a lot to my family and they matter a lot to me. But being back and forth from Africa, it's like, and after a pandemic, losing half your friends, it's like, so
that's like how you felt. Like I kind of brought that to the surface of like me ghosting you when really I think I just truly was just wrapped up in all of my crazy stuff. Like I was just dealing with a lot going on. And so that's the thing. It's like you never, like luckily we could talk about it and you could see, okay, yeah, she's going through a lot or whatever. Yeah. But that said, these relationships, I think like that's one thing that the pandemic also brought out was like how important relationships are. And how powerful they can be and how much it hurts when you don't have them or like when there's an absence of it and that interpersonal connection. But the communicating thing, like, that's so important. And I
Yeah.
feel like so many people just cut the tie. Like if it starts to get kind of awkward, oh, that was an awkward moment in person, they just don't want to communicate. But the way that we should deal with stuff is to just like say it in the moment. And I wish more people were more blunt like that, because I think we'd get further with just stuff of like, what's going on? Like, why did you do this? And
Yeah, well, they're too socially awkward. They can't handle confrontation. They're so uncomfortable with people in general. Yeah, and it's just turning into be like an impoverished culture of social relations.
Do you feel like your comic stuff like makes you more blunt? Because it's like, I feel like a lot of comedians I know, they go for shock, or like they will just say things because it's just the thing, like, whoa,
because it's unusual, right?
Yeah, did you just say that? I mean, you've done it a lot. Even before we started recording, you were saying things and I was like, whoa. I was like, oh, but comic Anthony.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, just like, because I know you.
I'm also
like,
a no filter.
you're a no filter kind of guy,
too,
and and that too. But I think it's like, all of my comic friends are like that. Do you
I'll
feel
say
like
anything about me.
Yeah,
I can say anything. I don't worry about it. I don't care if it looks bad.
yeah, and you'll just say it. But I feel like that might be the key to communication, is just like having that no filter worry of how somebody's going to respond.
Ideally, but the problem is people can't deal with it. So it doesn't work that well as a way of being. So, I mean, yeah, I think my way is cool and that everybody should be like that, but that's not how it is in the world. So it's like, if I keep getting shut down by these haters, then how do you like recalibrate?
Right. Yeah. No.
If you're dealing with fucked up people in a fucked up world, what's the right way?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Speaking of dealing with fucked up people, let's talk about dating in New York. Because like, New York is an interesting place. We've been talking about that for a while, but dating is horrible.
I told you about the last person I saw, right? And that's, I don't know.
No.
This is okay. Two things. There's somebody in Africa and there's somebody in New York.
I know the Africa girl, but anyway, yeah, keep going.
New York, the last person I saw, this talk about honesty. This is the most honest thing I've ever been in. So we're not even dating. She's a play partner. Okay. She's like into.
Explain with that. Yeah.
She's got sort of like certain kinks or whatever. And I don't even know if they align with mine, but the bottom line is she told me, she was totally blunt. She's like, I'm not into you. I'm not attracted to you. I won't be your fuck buddy, but I will do shit to you. And I was like, cool, I guess.
Yeah.
But then we started playing a little bit and it was like, well, this is fucking fun. We're friends and she'll do stuff to me. And then I'm like, but why if she's not attracted to me? But I'm not going to question it. But I was finally like, well, but then I was like, well, who are you attracted to? What do you want? Some like just like ripped guy? Like what's your? And she's like, no, I like usually like overweight guys and this and so I finally was like, I didn't have a complex. I was like, okay, fine, it's not me. It's.
How did you meet her?
I met her on FetLife.
Okay, so have you heard of Field?
No, is that a
okay?
fetish
So
app?
it's a fetish life app for our dating app, and lately I've been hearing a lot of people talk about it. They're like, "Ooh, Field," and I'm like, guys, I can't even get the basics down. Like that's the priority for. Like I just want to have that figured out. So like to make it like go into these other extremes and like fringe things. Not for me at this point in my life, but so you're on that.
Well, it's not a dating site. It's more for parties and different social things or even events. But like,
how do you put yourself out on one of these fetish?
You don't. Like if you start, like sliding into someone's DMs, they're like, "Fuck off." Did I meet you at a party? No, go away. It's more like a Facebook for kinksters.
Okay.
Basically. So, but do
you put your do you say like?
I
Anthony,
had reached out to her.
And then you say your kink or what? How does?
Yeah, like during the pandemic when there was nothing going on, I had sent her a DM, which not knowing her, but she responded, which was cool. And so we met. And then a year later, we actually played, which was interesting. She's moving out of town. So this incredibly ideal situation with someone who is getting nothing out of it, but just giving me like a good time. I don't know. It's bizarre.
So that's been your dating experience as of late?
That's the only thing, because I just don't feel like putting myself out there. I don't want to get on I don't want to make a profile.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The not making a profile thing, I completely relate to. Apps are horrible. I don't know how to package myself up to present to the world like this is me. And I don't know. I just feel like I kind of just have a good life, and I like what I'm doing, and I don't know how to like fit people into it. That's my biggest problem. And I don't know how long I can go like that though, because there's all these pressures of like, well, if there's, if you don't have someone, then there's something wrong with you. And so, it's
more
tricky.
So for a woman, I suppose, that kind of pressure.
And I don't even really care about that stuff, but I just feel it feels weird to be okay not fitting into like my mom, for example. It makes her sad if I'm not trying to start a family. It makes her sad, and I'm like, why does it make you sad? Because like it represents something. It makes
her look bad.
Yeah, it represents
to her
something
friends,
to
maybe,
her.
or something, maybe.
If I'm not trying to like use it while I've got it or whatever. And yeah, but like the funny thing is the dating scene though, or just trying to date, is just such a pain. And I'd rather date myself.
People are a nightmare. It's like you have to check every single box, or it's like you're out.
Yeah, and then that's the other thing is there's like this disposability to it. But so within like the dating in New York and like that scene and stuff, I mean, like throughout your experience, what has your experience been? Like, what's your takeaway? Like, like on love, or like, would you consider yourself a romantic?
I was always a romantic. Absolutely. Was, yeah. And now I just know too much.
Interesting.
I mean, you just have to read anything culturally speaking about romantic love and the history of it and how limiting it is. I'm not saying you can't be romantic and have great times, but, to find one person who's going to be your everything, who you're just blown away by, and those relationships don't always work. And I mean, starting at a young, I just have always gotten burned. Pretty much every time I was in love with somebody, it ended badly. And I got hurt. And so, I remember like when I moved to Africa, I was like, I'm going to give love another chance, because I met this person and it seemed like it was cosmically like meant to be and all this stuff. And then she ended up pulling the same bullshit that everybody else did. And it was just like, oh God, really? I opened up again to this thing. I thought maybe I could even marry this person. And then she just couldn't show up. She was unavailable on these important levels. She had 2 kids, which was a disaster. That made it really hard too. Mm-hmm. She was overwhelmed. I get it, all this stuff, but it was like for my birthday, this was the final thing. It's like we're supposed to fly to Durban and go beyond the Indian Ocean for my birthday. And then the night before, she hadn't even called me to say, she's like, I'm sorry, I didn't get the plane ticket. And I was like, she's like, I didn't have the money. I had to buy something for my daughter. And I was like, why didn't you tell me that 2 days ago? I would have bought the tickets. I should have bought them anyway, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like why? Like you would have gotten her there somehow.
Yeah. But then at this point, it's too late. Now she doesn't have childcare. So I was like, you completely ruined my birthday.
Yeah, that's a sign of like her life is the priority. She's not gonna sacrifice something to be there for you on an important day. But so that was like a more recent example of love just like burning you again.
Yeah,
so,
because if I was going to have that relationship, I would have to move to Cape Town where she lives, not even Johannesburg where I'm at. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to have to be there helping her do everything, managing her life. It would be about her life, and I'm not going to live in Cape Town. So
do you feel like you're like, so it sounds like you're kind of wounded by your understanding of love because of what you've seen. And like, that's sad, isn't it?
No, because wounded, it's like, that means it's permanently scarred, or like I'm damaged goods. No, I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
And I could still fall in love again, and that would be really nice. But I don't see that as the most important thing.
That's important.
Right? It's like good partnership, right? Would be great. I would build a life with somebody.
That's important.
Yeah.
That's everything.
And not based on romance. I mean, you obviously have to be attracted to somebody, but you've got to have a lot of other things going on.
The partnership thing of moving in the same direction and feeling like you're building something versus like the initial like sparks and whatever, like that's everything. Because I think people get blinded by the idea of it has to be like passionate physical stuff And then, because that's going to fade no matter what. It should be some of that.
Yeah, if the relationship can last long enough for it to fade.
Right. And like, I think that like I've noticed in myself, and I've talked about this a lot on my podcast on previous episodes, is just like the idea of building something to be proud of and like having shared curiosities to then like stay up all night talking about and like just like, oh yeah, like this project that I'm working on, that's everything. And that is what I think sound relationships.
I'm laughing just because I'll keep you up all night long with pillow talk. I'm the worst. Once I'm having a good time with somebody, I just can't stop.
That's something that in one of my positive relationships I look back on, because I have a handful of like great relationships, and I'm like, that was pretty good. That was a big thing. Was just like, could we stay up all night talking? Yeah, that was huge.
You gotta shut it down with me. It's like, just shut.
That's
up,
huge.
Anthony.
And when you don't have it, then that's also very hard, because you're just like,
what are we doing?
Yeah, because I was talking to a friend recently.
I'd rather be alone or with somebody,
like
a friend.
Or a friend who's not romantic. And like, and I have some friends like that we're not romantic, but if we like had, like I had a friend, I went out to a race with them for running and whatever, and we had that where we just like up all night. It was like felt like a sleepover, and we're like talking and stuff. And I'm
that's
like,
the beauty of the connection.
Oh man, like we're not romantic, but if we were, that could be great. But like it was kind of funny how I would rather be in that situation than with someone that I can't talk to who I'm dating. You know?
I'd rather spend the rest of my life with my best friend than someone I'm supposed to be in love with.
And I think that's kind of an interesting dynamic too, because but
everybody wants that, right? It's like you want your best friend, but you're attracted to them, and that's what I've gone for my whole life, and that shit never works out because everybody who's fun is fucked up. You've got to like, if you want to be a good relationship person, you got to be kind of a boring person. You got to be simple. You can't be that sexual. Because, sexual people probably going to cheat.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, like, I'm not attracted to someone who's, you've got to be kind and you got to be a good person if I'm going to go out with somebody. But that's the last requirement of mine. Because you just expect, it's harder to get someone who's really fun and dynamic and cool, right? Who you're going to be excited to be with. You got to go for that first. You got to be attracted to them. And then they better be kind, right? But they just aren't.
Yeah, and so often we'll make little sacrifices of things and like overlook it if we're blinded by the physical stuff of, okay, well, like at least we have that, and like we can be, we're physically into each other, so then we overlook the other things, and that it just becomes way more complicated. But then, like you're saying, if somebody's too practical and like too kind and it's boring.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
you're like, where are, it's like maybe a little selfishness is good, but not a lot. That's
I don't know.
You want someone who's full of themselves, right? But no, you can't be a total diva,
right?
Or it's not going to work out.
It's just and so it's just such a tricky thing, and I don't know why it's so hard. I feel like there's two kinds of people. They're the people who just kind of figure it out, and they're like, I don't want to have to deal with relationship stuff, and they just find like the simple person, they get married, and then that's that. But then they're the kind of people who really think they're more thoughtful and want the perfect thing, and they're not gonna settle for less, and then they're just kind of dating, and then suddenly you wake up and you're like, what am I doing? I've just dated, like what am I doing? And like I don't know. I've also found too with myself, like the aspects of certain people, I'm like, well, that was really great. Like that person cooked me dinner all the time, and it was so good, but then everything else sucked. Or like you have like little traits that you wish you could cherry pick from each person and be like, that was awesome. That was awesome. That was awesome. I need to make like a Frankenstein boyfriend.
Yeah, of course. Right. That's what everybody wants. And that's why everybody's single.
They have to like my music.
That's why everyone's single.
And it's just like, it's just impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible. But I
came close. I almost had it. Right.
Yeah. And I'm coming to terms with the fact that sometimes it's the partnership. I mean, I think that like my mom ended up over the pandemic. She lost my dad 5 years ago, and then my mom was this widow, and she was not going to waste any time. She found someone right away on Match.com over the pandemic, and she just really wanted someone. And I love my stepdad, but she really just wanted someone to be like have just like domestic life with, of just like watching shows, eating meals,
of course,
listen to her talk.
That's why I want a commune, and I tell all my friends that I'm like, I'm doing the commune. Don't worry, it's not a cult. I'm not the leader, but we're going to have a good time. Don't kill yourself, okay? Because this is going to be fun. We're going to be older, get some roller skates. I don't give a shit.
That's great.
We're gonna have a good time.
I like that.
And I've told all my friends that I'm telling you, I want to take over a building and get everybody in there, have one apartment for entertainment where we just
go crazy.
Yeah. It's going to be, I want to have a good time.
That's a good idea.
Half of that is living in close proximity to people. I mean, this is going to sound weird, but the Amish apparently have zero depression in their community. They're like, nobody there is depressed. And it's because they all live in close proximity, and it's a real community, and like
they know their purpose. This is a huge thing. Like all of the blue zones of people who live to be over 100, they have this, like the proximity with their community of just, if they don't wake up one day and like they're just feeling kind of blue, someone will come be like, what are you doing? You have to do this role in society. You're this person. And they like, you have accountability because your community is so close, and you can't not show up for stuff of like, what are you doing? You didn't come to our dinner or whatever, like, you know, and everyone's waiting for you, and that keeps you
right. We're
positive.
Building a house today, remember?
Yeah, exactly.
We're putting it the
like we
on.
need you, and that need, like the being of service and having like,
and they don't have cars, so you can't go that far away. You got a little buggy, and you got whatever, a couple of horses.
So that's interesting that the Amish are the like, so
the least depressed people in America. I mean, there's some like misogyny there, which is screwed up and wrong, and so it's not ideal. But in terms of community, it's amazing.
Interesting. Yeah, I wonder about that. Like the role in community, that's something that I've been trying to find for myself. I feel like I have a role in my community, but I, even just with like run coaching or something, like I feel like I give
you have a
back.
sense of community, right?
Yeah.
I want an actual community.
To build your own.
I want to build it. Yeah.
That's smart.
You want to join?
Yeah, totally. Would you do it in Williamsburg? It needs to be in, I think
we
it
got
needs
to
to be
get
in
one of
Brooklyn.
those old buildings that's rent stabilized that they can't sell for a lot.
Yes, and like building
Start
the little
squatting
but
in
they're
it.
what the thing
Start by squatting.
The idealism. I needed to get back to squatting in a second, but it's idealistic until someone starts breaking the rules, and then before you know it, it all comes crashing down. Where someone's taking a little more. It starts at dinner. It's a commune. You have enough food. Somebody's hoarding a little more food. Where's the food going?
Ayn Rand. You're like, this is why Russia fell. It's terrible.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God.
But, okay, so speaking of squatting, we've both lived in many different weird situations over the years and stuff. I know I have. I've lived in a loft where when it rained, it would come in, and it was just like, whatever. Like, I'm living the New York dream, you know. But you have a crazy story where you were a squatter, and then you went from squatter to homeowner in a short
like
period of time. So how did that happen? Explain that.
Okay, well, this goes back a long time. I was in college, but I had taken a year, like kind of a year off. I was following the Grateful Dead. Yep, I did that.
You were a deadhead.
And which I was embarrassed about afterwards, because it was all about like punk rock, and the punk rockers were like, those hippies are such dorks. So I was like pretending I never did that.
Jam bands.
Well, not really. I would admit it, but but I was into that when I was younger, and I followed the Grateful Dead, and so I was squatting in a geodesic dome out in Olympia. Which was
what is
awesome.
A geodesic dome?
It's a round house. It's like it was a wooden igloo. Every window is a skylight. It's like if you chopped a tennis ball in half and then just put it down.
How did you find this place?
Because I had no place to live, and I had just gotten back to Olympia, and I was like, where am I staying the night? I don't know. And then I bumped into this dude at the food co-op, and he's like, yo, I'm squatting at the dome. I was like, oh yeah, I'm there. And I moved into the dome with 3 friends of mine, so there were 4 of us there. And we were squatting, and then one day this realtor shows up. She's like, the bank is foreclosed on this place, so we have to show these people the property because they might buy it. And so I told these people looking at the place, I was like, look, if you buy this place, will you rent me one of these domes? Because they're freaking sweet. I want it. And she was like, why don't you buy the place? I'm like, dude, I'm 19. She's like, yeah, you know, you could get this place for like $4,000 down payment. So I was like, yeah, there's 2 domes, so I could get a partner. We each put in $4,000, which I had because I was selling mushrooms. That's how I was making money from the Grateful Dead scene.
Wow.
So I bought a house with mushroom money, paid the mortgage with mushroom money, and that was my jam. And then finished school at Evergreen, which was the weirdest.
So how
school
long
ever.
did you own this place?
For like 8 years, and I was like even collecting a little rent money off of it.
So you made money off of it.
A second.
Wow.
And then
the house that mushrooms built.
Yeah, that's what it was.
So So that was your homeowning experience. That's actually,
and then I sold it, and then I put it in the stock market at the right time, and it was like, zoop. Wow. And I just got really lucky. And then I lost it all, like,
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to know, I'd like to like talk about your experience with wealth and money. Just about like that relationship with.
Really?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that
kidding.
you have a really valuable perspective because you've been in proximity of that world. And like, I'm just curious, what is your relationship with like money?
Give it to me. I'll take whatever. You got some? Because I need some. No, I don't know. I usually hate people that like money. Pretty non-materialistic, artistic type. Always wanted to do something that seemed like important, not just. But then there's obviously something to be said for having stability in life.
Yeah, it's a necessary evil.
So I found that out kind of later on when it was too late. It was like, well, I always thought, well, if I needed to make money, I could. And then I tried to in real estate. And then I got in at the worst. New York City had like this bubble for 30 years. Then I join up and it's like, sorry, dude. First of all, we're shutting down the L train and then we're going to have a pandemic. And I was like, I guess I'm not doing real estate and I have no fucking money. Yeah. Okay. And it's scary when you have no life skills and
you're just kind of
broke.
coasting along. Yeah. That's
when you were like a trust funder, reluctant though, I chose to sell mushrooms instead of like opting into the money that I was given.
Interesting. Yeah. You're the punk rock trust funder.
Yeah, I was embarrassed to have any money to come from money. It was like, oh shit.
Like, don't look at me. Yeah, that's interesting. I always knew people. I went to prep school and I was like the poor kid at school and my mom worked there so that we could go there. But I mean, my dad was this like writer and just like it. We were very hand to mouth, but
they were cool. It sounds like they were cool.
They were cool. Like, yeah, my parents. They had grit.
Yeah.
And we knew like if we went to the grocery store and it was like, I want that thing or, they were like, shh, like, don't even ask because it's just not possible.
Well, my mom said that too. Anyway.
But that's interesting. But that relationship with money for me, I think it's good because it made me never see that as the end all be all. Like I like the amount that just keeps me okay. And if I can just kind of, if I'm not worrying about it, then I feel fine. Add a couple zeros, whatever. It's like, as long as like I'm here right now and good, then I feel pretty good. And that has nothing to do with like actual success in my mind, whereas some people, they need to see a certain amount to feel success. But since I was adjacent to that world, I saw the people who were so caught up in it of like having it all and like having the crazy savings and all that stuff. But for someone like you saw it and that it didn't speak to you. It sounds like.
No, it didn't. It was embarrassing, but at the same time, it kind of provided freedom. It was like, I think I was 23, 24 or something. And my mom kind of insulted me one day. She was like, so, Anthony, you haven't made a dime in your life. You wouldn't even know what it would be like to work. And I was like, oh man, am I going to tell her? Am I going to say something? I'm like, Mom, are you fucking kidding me? Dad stopped paying for shit when I was in second year of college. I paid for everything. I did everything. Yeah, you did the tuition, but I paid for everything because guess what I did, Mom? I sold drugs. I'm a drug dealer, Mom. That's how bad she pissed me off with the, you don't know how to make it. You wouldn't know anything about it. So I finally just spilled the beans.
I figured out a way. Yeah.
Yeah, I figured it out. And then she made me promise to live off of the money that was given to me from my grandfather from this inheritance, and
so that it wouldn't have to be drug money.
So I was like, I agreed to do it. I was like, all right, fine, for you.
That's so funny.
I will do that.
No matter
and
what,
I haven't worked a day since.
It's funny because my I feel like no matter what you come from, my mom, she didn't have any money to give, but like the one time I feel like I think she gave me like $30 like in 2007, like so I could buy a metro, something like that. Like it was like. Yeah. I still hear about it. Like, it's like that. Like I've supported, and it's like, but then again, it's like, I come from like, there wasn't anything. So but the moms like to like, I don't know, show, they bring up things as if it's like so much bigger than it actually was. But in this case, it sounds like a different story because it was you trying to.
Let's just put it this way. When I actually, for the first time in my life, had to ask somebody for money, she said no.
That's something my dad always said to me. My dad said, you never ask anyone for money.
Yeah, of course.
That's not your family.
So
ever.
No, I asked my mom. And she was like, awkward. And then
your mom. Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Interesting. And since she was just like, nope.
So I was like, you do know that I will have zero money soon, like none.
Wow.
And, but
I had something like that with my dad where I desperately needed to pay my rent when I first moved to New York, and it was like $1,500 and it was coming up on the first, and I just didn't have it. And I was like, Dad, I didn't get paid. The client didn't pay the thing and whatever. And he said, oh, what are you going to do? And was like, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, what do I like? I'm a kid. I don't know.
Like,
it's New York. And then he asked me, what am I going to do? And I was like, okay. And then I had to think fast on my feet. And I don't even know how I dealt with that. But I think I got an advance from my agency at the time. But yeah, it wasn't an option. So it was a simpler kind of thing. He didn't say I'm not going to give you anything. He just told me I had to figure it out. And that meant going and looking, find it. But
yeah, I think people are weird about not wanting to coddle people. That's like an old school way of thinking. It's like, give them support and try to help them figure stuff out. It's okay. But when you're old like me, you're not helping. You're not going to mess me up by coddling me or something. What's done is done. Different. I'm old. No, I did not make it in the world financially. And so what's your move now? You're going to let me die? Am I going to be homeless?
It's kind of like at a certain point, it just is, it's not about how it's going to shape you if someone helps you out.
Yeah.
But
on that, this is just survival. And so because it got a little dark there for a little bit. But, real dark. I was like, Mexico, they have these euthanasia. Should I be telling the world this? If you want to kill yourself, I know how. Okay, you go to Mexico. They allow you to kill your dog there. So just say, I want to kill my dog, and they'll give you all this stuff, and you just take it and say goodbye to everyone and take it.
Oh my God, I didn't realize that.
By the way, I'm all for voluntary euthanasia and stuff. You can go to Switzerland.
How to Die or something. There's a movie about it.
The Right to Die.
Where it's like the Dr. Death who teaches people how to do that, or or not
those people are saints.
Well, if you have a terminal illness and you're if you've
had enough.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy to think about. I definitely had a friend who was talking about this back in the day, because I think their dad, it was if that was only an option, it might have saved a lot of struggle. But I mean,
can you believe that? It's barely legal for the terminally ill. It's you got to prove this and do that and whatever. It's I'm in pain, I'm dying, let me go, I'm 85.
Then there's the 1% of what if it was a wrong misdiagnosis, or there was something that was going to be on the up the next day, or how do you really know? What if things turn around? Important? My grandmother used to talk. My grandmother used to say something about suicide, which was, she said, how is it ever bad enough that tomorrow it's not going to be just a little bit better? And in a weird way, that it's true.
Privileged white lady.
Well, she's not privileged, but this idea that if it's a little, it could even the potential for it to be a little bit better is worth just holding out. And assisted.
No one wants to make a drastic decision because they're overwhelmed by something and to kill themselves. I mean, but if it's rational, if it's thought out, you've spoken to people about it, and this is the right thing for you to do for whatever reason, I think people should be allowed to do it, and they are allowed to do it in Switzerland. So
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I almost don't have an opinion on it as much as I can just try to think about both sides. But
what about you're pro-choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's the same thing. It's exactly this. I was just gonna say Roe versus Wade.
Your own life either.
Yeah,
you can't kill a baby now, and you can't kill yourself. What kind of people are we? What the fuck is wrong with us? Oh my God.
Wow. Oh, well, on that note,
yeah, right. It's I'm so topical. Oh, by the way, speaking of abortions, awesome. My mother had one right after me, which kind of made me wonder if she loved me. But my grandmother was on the board of Planned Parenthood, and I'm really proud of that.
Wow.
She was also on Nixon's enemies list, which is even cooler.
Nixon's enemies. What did she do to get on that list?
Yeah, she was like an influential person, and she had given money to McGovern's campaign or whatever, and he was like, "Fuck that lady, I'm putting her on my enemies list," which was a famous list. So if you got on it, it was kind of cool.
That's really awesome.
Because all the Republicans were Nixon people.
So that's kind of a cool descendant to have, or like to have as your
she was a badass
lineage. Yeah.
She was like at the Sorbonne in Paris when Charles Lindbergh did the transatlantic flight.
Wow. And talk about a crazy ass flight.
So like the ambassador to the United States wasn't there to welcome him, so they had Gagi go because she was like New York society and kind of knew everybody. And so she's brought Lindbergh to the table.
Wow.
And she was like, he's so boring. Apparently, she's like, this dude had nothing to say. Like, well, it could have been a long flight, right? But
where he could have easily died.
I was like, this is what I love about Gagi. He's like, he's boring, right? Like, he's no personality. But as it turns out, like the media talks about him as being really boring too.
Oh, so she was right. That's really funny. Yeah, talk about like those days too of just like flying and having no sense of if you're gonna be okay. Like there's no
sense of humor and no sense of knowing if you're gonna die.
Well, but like there's no standards of like, okay, this is the way to do it to make sure that you're not gonna like have a million things go wrong. But yeah, that's wild.
And that's okay. We're gonna let that person. I can't kill myself, but that guy can fly across the Atlantic.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's a different kind of logic.
I just brought, let's just get rid of the suicide. We're over that today.
But anyway, yeah. So this was an interesting chat. I didn't know where we were going to go, but we went a lot of places, from selling mushrooms to funding your house. And
I'm selling them now, by the way. So everybody hit me up. I need money. I need real money.
And so I feel like we've talked about a lot of interesting things. I definitely got something out of this conversation. And until next time, just be fast. Just win.